Joining me from Vancouver, I am very fortunate to be talking with the executive producer of the film RiverBlue. The documentary, captured over many, many years and crossing many borders, it examines the destruction of our rivers due to the manufacturing of denim and the fashion industry, its effects on humanity, and the solutions that inspire hope for a sustainable future. Full disclosure, I am not a journalist. This is not my main gig, but this is a really important film. And I hope that more people like you and me watch it and then make a positive change in how we consume the clothes that we wear. And I'm so honored that Roger gave so much of his attention and time to share with us many, many stories behind the making of RiverBlue. Here's my chat with Roger Williams. I'm so excited to talk to you. It's really hard to stay calm. I think there's a little part of me that always wanted to be a journalist, and then I destroyed that for myself many, many years ago. So you're giving me a second chance. Thank you very much, Roger Williams.
Thank you, Christina, for the opportunity to talk to you. And I think the music career that you have is pretty stellar itself. So keep doing that too.
Oh, that's very kind of you to say. You started out in comedy and went to sports. First, you were an audio guy on the famed SCTV comedy series in Edmonton back in 1979.
Very junior audio guy.
Very junior.
So,
What does that
yeah.
mean? You just like you had how did?
I swept the floors, all that stuff.
And then you transitioned to a director of photography. Like that's a cool role. You just went from sweeping the floor to director of photography.
Well, sort of. It's a little longer than that, but I was involved in audio, and I really liked audio. And when I ended up at SCTV, I went, "Holy cow! There's a whole new world. It's called TV." And
Yeah.
I'd never really thought about it. I was really going towards being a recording engineer for music, and
Okay.
so I have a very big appreciation of music and for what artists do. And but I transitioned into camera work and
Mm-hmm.
ended up moving out to Vancouver and ended up with the TSN contract.
TSN calls, and you spend many, many years predominantly in sport television production, and then eventually you start your own company. You're the president and the
Well, actually,
CEO. Oh, yes, go ahead.
there's another little thing. This ties back to music. I then got a
Okay.
call from Much Music, and so I was working with Much
Oh,
Music and TSN. So I was doing concerts and sports events, and as a young person, I was living the dream,
yeah,
and it was fantastic. And then along that, because I kept kind of growing, I
yeah.
ended up with a company, and now here we are, 30 some odd years later, and still having fun and still working with TSN and doing
Still,
these documentaries.
this is very cool. President and CEO of Inspired Image Picture Company.
Again, with the music stuff, it's been really, really interesting because we've done really big multi-camera, 14, 16 cameras for Imagine Dragons, Moody
Wow.
Blues, and Era, all kinds of cool stuff. And
Yeah.
so it's just been a lot of fun. But, again, we're also doing some fun stuff like River Blue.
Can you describe to me this kind of time in your life where you're deciding, I'm going to make an environmental film? I mean, where did that come from? Did you grow up with a family that was conscientious about the environment?
Not really. No, we're in Alberta, and so it was oil and and all that kind of stuff. So I never
Mm-hmm.
really thought environmental films at all. But what happened along the way, I've actually done a whole bunch of documentaries for Discovery Channel and various other people, and a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
were somebody else's idea coming back to me and saying, "Hey, can you go out and produce or direct this thing?" Which we did,
Mm-hmm.
and that was all great. But I'm also getting older, and I went, I've never done an environmental film, so
Mm-hmm.
let's see what that's like. And so River Blue was really the first environmental film that I tackled. Just in the research, I knew it was going to take a long time to do
Yeah.
and hard to finance and all that kind of stuff
Yeah.
because I talked to some broadcasters, and typically broadcasters, if you get involved in a documentary for them, they want it done, within a year and usually in 6 to 8 months or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just knew that just even starting the research, I was like, this is going to be a big animal to actually produce.
Right.
So yeah, I just started down that road, and we got it done. But it did take 3 years of actual production. David and I have actually known each other for a long time, and I've hired him to produce some stuff for me, and he's hired me to shoot or direct some stuff that he's done. So
Hmm.
we've had a long relationship, and
Okay.
it was interesting because I was on a phone call with him, and I said, Dave, I got this idea, and
Hmm.
I want to do this water documentary. I'm not sure really what it's going to be about yet.
Yep.
Uh, and so I kind of gave him my idea of what I wanted to do. And I wanted it to be on fashion. I wanted it to be on water, but I really didn't have kind of the story down yet. And
Okay.
so I was doing a lot of research and all the rest of it. And Dave phoned me back about a month later, and he said, "Hey, I'm sending you this picture from China, and it's basically it's a blue-black stain coming out of a river." And he
Yep.
goes, "That's the Pearl River in China, and that's where the Blue Jeans capital is now located."
Wow.
And I went, wow, that's super cool. And so I said, Dave, do you want to co-direct this with me? And he went, yeah, great
Yes.
opportunity to go travel the world and do some, what we thought was going to be a very interesting film.
Trying to get into some of these locations, it must have been just really, you must have had to have been sneaky.
I travel as a journalist and have a journalist visa when I'm going into various countries because we
Oh,
have a team of people that are coming with us. It's not just Dave and myself, but
yeah.
I had another camera guy, I had an audio guy, we had a drone helicopter operator,
Right.
and we had Mark Angelo, our central character.
Hmm.
So we're traveling with a group of people at some times. And so getting into India, I ended up going to the Indian consulate in Vancouver 18 times
Wow.
just to try and get the visas in place. And I had a fixer, a local location manager in
Yeah.
Delhi, who was also trying to work with us and get us into the country.
Hmm.
Finally
That's
worked.
wild.
But it was wild. It was in getting into China, I thought was going to be incredibly difficult,
Hmm.
and it wasn't. So it was just the complete flip side. It was we
Wow.
applied for our visas, and 4 days later, I got a phone call from the Chinese embassy, and they went, "Sure, here, come pick up your visa." And I'm like, that was weird to me. I thought China was going to be almost impossible to get into.
And you were telling them exactly why you were there, or were you kind of shading
Well,
it, or just?
we're shading it in a way that we're doing an environmental documentary on water, and we want to come over, and we're looking for good stories as well.
Hmm.
So it was not just all about being bad, but of course when
Hmm.
you're applying for a visa, you want to be able to tell them kind of what you're doing. And in
Yeah.
the case of India, we had to write a treatment of to what the show is going to be like,
Yeah.
and basically full disclosure on what we're doing.
Yeah.
uh, China was a little less. It was
Wow.
like weird. Everywhere we went, I'd already hired location managers to work with us in Australia or in Africa or in China, Indonesia, and all the rest of that.
Hmm.
And so, they are the local knowledge. They basically tell us how and when we can do things
Hmm.
and what we can do. And they also went out and I gave them a directive of this is the stories that we're looking for in this location.
Yep.
We need to get access to factories. We need to get access to interviews and people.
Hmm.
And I again doing our research, we kind of knew who we wanted to talk to.
Hmm.
We didn't always get everybody we wanted, but at the same time, we got really, really profoundly great interviews.
Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
world, and better in some cases than I really hoped for.
Were there a lot of other stories that just didn't make the cut?
Dave and I were scouting a location to do an interview with Mark, and we kind of we're on a river, and we wanted to kind of get up on the hill just to see if we could, what it's going to look like looking back
Uh-huh.
down the river. And what happened is we got up on top of the hill, and there was a bunch of water buffalo, and they decided to chase us.
Oh, that would have been awesome to keep in the film. Were the cameras rolling?
We didn't get that on film, the chasing of Dave and myself by the water buffalo.
Oh.
Another story, again, where we travel to in Bangladesh, for instance,
Hmm.
is a pretty dangerous country.
Hmm.
Without local knowledge and with our fixer, our guide, Pinaki Roy,
Hmm.
who was also in the film, I mean, he was very clear from day one when we met him. He came to our hotel to pick us up with his driver,
Hmm.
and he said, "You have to follow my instructions to the T. If I say move, move. If I say we got
Oh,
to go, we got to." And I said,
okay.
"Really?" He said, "No." Bangladesh is really dangerous. There's a lot of terrorism. There's a lot of stuff that we in the Western world don't know anything about.
Right.
And one day we were filming underneath a bridge, and it was an outlet of this pipe, and it's purple water coming out of a factory, and it's just awful and disgusting and
Yeah.
very smelly, and just a terrible situation, and people living beside the river. And Panaki was up top with the driver, and he just yells down, "Roger, got to go now." And so we just grabbed the
Whoa.
truck, and we're driving along. And I said, "What's going on, Panaki?" And he's talking to the driver, and it's like, "Turn left now, turn right now, turn over here." And I'm going, "What's going on?" And he goes, "There's some people in motorcycles behind us, and they're following us. And what they're doing is they're on their cell phone, and they're calling friends. And what they'll do is they'll get these
Oh.
and they'll get in all four sides of the vehicle to slow you down, and then they firebomb you and kill you."
Amazing. Oh my goodness. Okay, that I didn't
That's
expect that. I thought maybe they just try to like, I don't know, give you a hard time, bully you, but no, they would kill you. Well, I'm really glad you survived that. And I was curious about
why.
Panaki Roy. Panaki Roy is a chief reporter for the Bangladeshi newspaper, the Daily Star in Dhaka. And I was wondering, um, if after the film was out, if his life was in jeopardy because he was in the film.
So I've talked to Panaki a number of times since the film has come out and
Hmm.
been released, and he is still reporting, and he's being safe,
He's
and
alive.
he's alive, and he's doing fine.
Okay, good. Say hi for me.
Yeah, and but it is still very, very challenging over there, and there's
Wow.
still a lot of terrorism, a lot of deaths that happen over there. When we were there, we were only there for about 10 days in Bangladesh, but
Hmm.
it was just crazy how much stuff was happening over there that just wasn't reported over here in the Western world.
Yeah, it's incredible that he basically risks his life on a day to day for his job and for projects like this.
Certain parts of the world are very much against, environmental goodness because
Right.
it affects their jobs. There's one
Mm.
factory in China that we're in, and the owner wanted to be in the film, and he is. All he cared about was getting $500 for a location fee, and we could basically do anything in this factory. Over in Africa, of course, it's dangerous for a different reason.
Hmm.
It's like to charge people, and they don't really like people, and I totally understand why.
Hmm.
It was pretty wild to be able to travel around the world like we did,
Hmm.
and just to be able to experience a lot of those local cultures, what you're talking about, and really connect with a lot of people and a lot of really cool people that were really kind of right on side with what we're doing. It was really neat.
Before you went on this journey, how much information did you have going in about the link between the fashion industry and the destruction of our world's most important rivers, our biggest rivers, before you even started the research? Like, was it on your radar?
Not really. I just, again, when I wanted to start the documentary, and I was really looking at water issues around the world,
Hmm.
and I was looking at things like dams, and the
Hmm.
decommissioning of dams, and I was looking at, um, you know, overfishing, and I was looking at, fish farms and other, other water issues around the world, and
Yeah.
or the thereof. But it was really again when we really hit on the blue jeans and the fashion industry that I really started. Okay, now we got to focus. Let's dive into this and figure out what's really going on in the fashion industry. And it's not again just the fashion industry; it's textiles in general. It could
Yeah.
be your couch, it can be your clothing. There's just so much that's going on. In doing the research, it was um, it was incredible. It was. I
Hmm.
just couldn't believe how destructive it was, and how things were being done and where they were being done, and how
Hmm.
it affects a lot of local communities and people that have to live beside the river or rivers. And as I've told many people, because I have traveled so much,
Hmm.
half the world is really camping. They're not in houses. They're
Yeah.
living in lean-to tents and what makeshift housing of some sort, and they
Mhm.
have to go to their local river to get their drinking water, their bathing water, and all that kind of stuff. So again, we're so fortunate in Canada
Yeah.
and North America and Europe, that we don't see a whole lot of this around the world in different parts of the world. And so we are just very, very fortunate. And again, I wanted to bring this to the world, that we need to do a better job of water conservation, river restoration, all that kind of stuff.
So after making this film and launching it, can you speak to what has changed in your professional and personal life? Like, it can be little decisions, just conscientiousness. What's changed? I mean, I can list things that have changed even just from watching it, but just going through 3 years of it. What's changed for you and your work and your family?
Um,
Habits, behaviors?
all of that stuff. I'm certainly more conscientious of my water usage and these simple things like, if you're brushing your teeth, are you leaving the tap running?
Yeah.
And so I don't do that anymore. When I'm looking for clothing, I'm looking for better clothing.
Yeah.
I'm looking for, stuff that's sourced and a little more ethically produced.
Hmm.
And what was interesting as well is that when we were doing this film, one of the things I said to Dave and the rest of my team is that we need good news stories. We really need to. It can't be another documentary where at the end of it you just, oh my God, there's no hope for the world. Let's,
Yeah.
find
Yes.
something else to do. Um,
Yeah.
so I really needed to find the positive stories, and it was really, really difficult to find positive stories.
Hmm. Hmm.
There was just we were searching for probably a year. My
Wow.
producing partner, Lisa Mazzata, who lives in Los Angeles, but she's a Canadian. She was up here at the time, and I was talking to her and said, we just have to figure out some better stories. And
Yeah.
she was the one that found the story with genealogia
Hmm.
in Spain, and what a great story that was.
Yeah.
And and what they're doing. And again, it may not be perfect yet, but a lot of their processes keep getting refined. And I was
Hmm.
talking to their marketing manager actually a few months ago. He contacted me and he said, we need to update RiverBlue because that
Hmm.
technology that's being used, we're about 3, 4 generations past that already
Right.
because they
I was going to
put in
ask you
better
that. Yeah.
equipment.
But that's
And so,
great.
and that is great. It's
Yeah.
it's really super cool. I'm in Vancouver one day and we had the film almost completed. And I really wanted another good news story, and
Hmm.
we were searching and struggling and whatever. And all of a sudden, I get this email out of the blue um, from Ital Denim, and I'm like, "Who's this
Ah,
guy?" And he writes to me and he goes, "I've heard about your film River Blue. I must be in it.
I must be
Can
in
we?
it.
I must be in it, and
That's
can
so
we have a?"
European. That is so European.
It was hilarious,
I
and
love it. Yeah. Very
and I just
straightforward.
very
Very,
straightforward. It was right to
yeah.
the point. And I wrote back to him and I said, uh, you know,
Mhm.
who are you? What's this about? And I was talking to this guy and I went, holy cow, this is very interesting. And 10
Yeah.
days later, I was in his factory, and
Amazing.
we went over there, and he's got his own wastewater treatment plant. He recaptures steam
Hmm.
to help create his own electricity. He
Yeah.
was doing everything 100% right. Greenpeace came out with a report in 2012 that was called Toxic Threads, and Ital Denim really looked at that and really wanted to follow that kind of guideline, and so they started making their factory with really best practices
Hmm.
for everything that they're doing, the wastewater treatment, recapturing steam to help make electricity, you
Hmm.
know, and then the biggest one for me was using kitazen, which is
Hmm.
crushed up shellfish, as a
Yeah.
fixing agent for their dyeing. And I went, huh? That is, to me, it was quite bizarre, but yeah,
Yeah. That was really cool.
and I go, where do you find crab shells?
Yeah.
From the restaurant industry, right? Because they're cooking crab and or prawns or whatever it happened to be. So he's recycling something that would have been thrown away. Recently, I saw him in Toronto at a conference,
Hmm.
and he said, "Hey, look at this jean jacket I just made," and it was a really dark gray, not quite black, but it was really dark gray. And I said,
Cool.
"So what's this?" And he says, "I actually found a new waste product, and it's graphite." And I'm
Okay.
using the graphite and the kitazen as the fixing agent and
Hmm.
stuff again with a waste material that would have just ended up in a landfill. Being in the year 2020, the Greenpeace report from 2012,
Yeah.
basically they had a mandate by 2020
Yep.
that a whole bunch of companies sign the declaration that they're going to start being a lot more toxic free and doing things in a much better way.
Hmm.
And what has happened, of course, is along the way, a lot of large companies have said, "Oh, we can't really quite get there yet. It might be 2030, maybe it'll be
Oh,
2040."
2030. Wow. Okay.
Oh, yeah. And but the flip side of this is that, and this is what I'm quite proud of. River Blue has actually had a profound effect on the fashion industry. I had no idea, quite honestly.
Fantastic.
I thought the fashion industry would just go, "We don't want to know about River Blue. Let's just
Yeah.
bury it, not be involved. Let's just let it go by, and it'll, and the story will fade." But what's
Yes.
happened is there's a bunch of manufacturers in that fashion space who have
Hmm.
said, "This is time that we got to start doing it." A lot of them are much smaller manufacturers, but even
Hmm.
the big guys like Levi's are becoming more responsible. They've got a great big R&D facility in Berkeley,
Hmm.
California, and they are looking at ways of making jeans with a lot less water and a lot different dyeing processes. The film has, it's certainly done well in the film festival world, um, but the one thing it hasn't done yet is really got to that mainstream broadcast system. We've been turned down by
Hmm.
Netflix, we've been turned down by Hulu, we've been turned down by
Right.
Amazon, and we've been turned down by virtually every broadcaster in the world. And the reason for that is really the advertising base for broadcast is really twofold. It's automotive, cars, automotive,
Hmm.
and it's fashion. And so a lot of the broadcasters, they look at it and go, maybe this film will alienate the audience, or certainly
They're
the
nervous.
manufacturers and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think that would really be the case, because the manufacturers are now trying to become much better and trying
Right.
to source out, better
Yeah.
product and make better product. And the consumers are actually starting to demand that.
Yeah.
So, I'm hoping that at some point it will find more of a broadcast release, and we'll get it out there to a bigger, wider audience.
I'm a firm believer, and I don't know if you are, that if majority of people, not everybody, see that there's an option to, that they can get their fashion uh, around the same price, um, and it's good for the planet. It's better for the planet. It's better for them and their children in the future. Then they will make that choice.
It really is having a reach, and it's really having, like I said, it's a profound effect. I'll tell you a couple other stories that are
Yeah.
really interesting to me. I was contacted a number of months ago by a couple of guys from Wrangler Jeans,
Okay.
and they said, "We saw your film at a film
Hmm.
festival in North Carolina,
Hmm.
and, and we're in the sustainability side of Wrangler, so we're looking at new
Great.
initiatives." And they said, "We make a lot of our denim products over in Bangladesh," and
Hmm.
and they said, "We go over there and we have a conference with a lot of these manufacturers at a hotel, and we asked them who has a wastewater treatment facility, and they said we almost got laughed out of the room." And
Oh.
and he says, "But we got to start doing better." So, I
Yeah.
don't know how we're going to make this happen. And I said, "You know what? I was contacted by an engineer who wants to do a pilot project." And again, he saw the film at some film festival wherever he lives. And he contacted me and he says, "Hey, I want to do a pilot project with a fashion brand because I've come up with a system that I think will clean wastewater, and it can take dyes out and it can recycle water and it can do all
Hmm.
this kind of stuff." He said, from a layman's term, it's like a big Dyson vacuum cleaner, and it,
Yeah.
moves things around and it separates them. I
Yeah.
went, "That's cool." So I put him together with the guys from Wrangler, and they actually are starting a pilot project in Bangladesh right now.
That's great.
It's a different type of thinking that's starting to happen around the textile industry. And again, that's people seeing it at film festivals. So
Yeah. And
pretty proud of it, that has happened.
yeah, the film, I think it scares people into caring if they weren't caring before. And but the other thing about it that I loved, again, and I think why it does inspire change, positive change, is that you are showing the examples of how this can be done differently. You're shining a light on that. So then other people who weren't even, it wasn't on their radar, we're not even going to think, we're going to ignore this issue because we can't even fathom how to even make it better. The money that it would take, the resources. And when you see other people making it happen, it's obviously, well, okay, now there's research out there. and we can maybe make it better or copy it or whatever. But I do think that it's important because some people watching this don't understand why is it what is so bad about the textile industry or the manufacturing of denim specifically. And I have a list here. In manufacturing denim specifically, we're using harsh chemicals in the manufacturing process. These chemicals are not only dangerous to the working environment, the people working there, but they can be deadly. They are deadly, and they're causing people a lot of people are getting sick and dying young and prematurely. Um, but also, the process uses 3.2% of all available fresh water in the world. That is a remarkable percentage. But the fashion industry, this one really got me, is responsible for 20% of the world's freshwater industrial pollution. That's a massive amount. Denim, in particular, billions of gallons of fresh water are used to produce millions of new denim. I mean, I love denim. Uh, but do we need that much denim in our world? Like, where's it going? I mean, denim sticks around typically for a long time. Why are we making so much friggin' denim? The raw toxic sewage is directly pumped back into the rivers, which is such a focus point in the film, and that serves as the main water source for billions of people. People are like living, walking, like it seemed like people were washing their clothes in this filthy, dangerous, deadly water. And I know I'm not there. I know I'm here, and safe in Nova Scotia. The water's, fairly clean. Not that we've had our issues, but like I'm watching this I'm just horrified and really feeling through the screen I just can't believe people are touching the water. Is there anything else you want to add to that list? Just it's so
Well, I
depressing.
will just on that point because it is depressing, and I
Yeah.
don't mean to, but just to
No.
bring awareness. Of course, the sea refuses no river, right?
Mm,
So
mhm, mhm.
all this stuff is going into a river. It's going into the oceans. If we kill the oceans, we're done.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting. Um, there's a shot in the film, and you'll probably remember it, and it's all this white chemical foam on
Yeah.
top of this. And we were just about to we were doing an interview with Sunita Naren in Delhi, and she asked me about a couple of the rivers that we're on. I mentioned this one particular river with the chemical foam, and she goes, "That's
Mhm.
not a river." And I went, "What do you mean?" It's like half a mile wide. And she goes, "That's all chemical industrial waste."
Gross. It's terrible.
Gross.
Yeah.
I did see, there's a shot of a dog in it,
Oh,
and there's cows going down and drinking from it, and they're not drinking
yeah.
water; they're chemicals. So you talk about
Yeah.
short lifespans. Man, oh man, it was unbelievable. And again, going back to Bangladesh and some of the factories that we're in India and Indonesia,
Yeah.
I was definitely the oldest person in the group because they
Wow.
don't live past,
Yeah.
so it is toxic, it's deadly, they're not protected, by the manufacturers really not doing anything. People walking around with chemicals on the floor and they're in bare feet, no
Yeah.
gloves,
Yeah.
and the smell, which you can't come across on TV, was horrific. It was like the smell of turpentine on steroids. It just gave me an instant headache the whole time I was in these factories.
Yeah.
So they are deadly places, and I think the manufacturing industry has to take a closer look at what they're doing and be a little more responsible. And yes, it may cost a little more, but we got to find some better solutions for all of this. And I know it's coming, and we're maybe taking baby steps, but there's a lot of work to be done for sure.
Can you speak as a storyteller, cinematographer, uh, as you're taking people through like some of the most beautiful rivers, pristine, clean, lovely, and then with Mark, and you're also depicting the most polluted rivers in the world. Can you speak to the dichotomy of that as a storyteller and a cinematographer? Um, trying to you've got these beautiful shots and making it's feeling lovely watching it, and then these revealing these really ugly truths to find a balance.
And it's trying to find that balance. And Mark is a great water conservationist.
Mhm.
He's been involved in Greater World Rivers Day and in all these other initiatives. He's an educator, has been for a long time. Um, and I really wanted to work with Mark actually because of his sensibilities. And I, when I first approached him, I said, and I've known Mark for a number of years before we went out and did RiverBlue. And I phoned him up one day and I said, I'm working on this film with David McElfried,
Hmm.
and we've written a treatment. We want you to have a look at this and consider kind of joining our band of merry folk and
Hmm.
traveling to a lot of these places. And he was like, yeah, he was just
I'm
like,
in.
no question, I'm in.
Yeah.
And I said, I really do want to go to some of these really pristine, beautiful areas.
Yeah.
Uh, and I also want to go to some of the world's worst, and really try and figure out, um, put the story together so that we can see that hope is not completely lost. If we
Hmm.
want to, as a group of individuals, we can actually help make change.
Yeah.
And he was all for that. And again, his World Rivers Day is all about river cleanup and that whole organization. It's the fourth Sunday, or yeah, I think it's the fourth Saturday or Sunday every year in September. They do this massive world river cleanup, and it's amazing. They have, I think it's over 70 or 80 countries involved. There's
Hmm.
millions of people around the world that spend a day and go down and clean up their local river, and that what a
Wow.
great thing to do, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what one individual can do, or one family can go down and spend one day a year and go help out the local river that they live by.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. We met a number of the river keepers around the world as well,
Hmm.
and incredible passion for their waterways. And again, waterways typically don't have a voice, right?
Right.
So I had to become their voice,
Hmm.
tell the story through RiverBlue of what's really going on.
Hmm.
And it's really bad, it's really destructive. But if we want to, as a collective, we can make a change and we can do better. And
Yeah.
everything that we do with our clothing can be manufactured in a much better way. A couple of weeks ago, I was
Hmm.
reading an article, and this company and some scientists over in Europe, they figured out how to make dye from bacteria.
Oh, wow.
So how cool is that? So I was on a call with this finance guy when we first started RiverBlue, because I was looking at how we're going to finance the film.
Hmm.
And he goes, well, what are you wearing? And I said, I'm wearing some crappy $20 jeans from Costco. And he goes, see, you're part of the problem. I went, yeah, you're right. I am part of the
Yeah.
problem, but I'm also part of the solution.
Hmm.
And now that I know what I know, I'm going to start looking for better clothing. And is it better for me
Yeah.
just to take a crappy pair of jeans and throw them in a landfill? Or should
Yeah.
I wear them, or should I recycle them, or what should I do? And same thing
Right.
with a leather coat.
Yep.
I still have a leather coat. It's probably
Hmm.
30 years old. You know, I can recycle it. I can do
Yeah.
something with it. I can go to a Value Village or some other thrift store. If it's at the end of my life, with that clothing, what do we do? And so
Yeah.
there are options. And again, do we need, you kind of brought this up, do we need the amount of clothing that we have already? And the answer
Yeah.
to that is no, we do
No.
not. There are so many different ways that we can repurpose our clothing. There's a great
Hmm.
initiative that was started, I believe it's in New York. It's called Rent the Runway.
Hmm.
And primarily for women, so you can rent a fancy dress, and you can rent other stuff to, or suits or whatever, and you rent it, you use it for whatever period of time, and you send it back. And I went,
Yeah.
well, that's a interesting and novel, different thing to do.
Yes.
So there's just different situations coming around that just weren't available 5 years ago or even 10 years ago.
I found your website, and then there's great links that are pointing people to things like, I downloaded the app Good On You, and you can search by category what type of clothing you want to buy, whether it's underwear, t-shirts, denim. And then there's this really long list of brand names I'd never heard of, but and they're all rated, you know uh, in terms of how eco-friendly they are. And I just thought, this has opened up a whole other world. I don't have an excuse anymore, really. But until that is really brought forth, or somebody, I mean, I was curious and I started digging and whatnot. But I think over the year, I'm hopeful that more people will be made aware of these options. It's taking, it seems so long. People are always up for convenience, and so they the go-to brands, and I think we it's easy to get a little bit, lazy in our consumership, and it really does take an effort initially anyway, and then you get used to it, and you have to set boundaries for yourself, and you have to put your foot down and say, I'm not going to support this anymore until this company decides to make the positive changes, to join the club, in making the world safer and healthier. um, but yeah, I mean, it's how do we motivate people to do that? Um, that's something I think that companies really might struggle with. How do you think the global pandemic, has affected the progress in manufacturing companies making these changes in these big brands? And has it? You were saying earlier that some of these brand names that it committed to the Greenpeace detox program have said, oh, it's going to take a little bit longer than expected. Um, do you think COVID has provided maybe an excuse for some companies to take a little bit longer, or do you think people are just still organizations are still on track?
Again, I think it kind of works in a way that some companies, they're just going to do what they're going to do, and
Hmm.
pandemic or whatever, they're going to manufacture their clothing the way they want to do it, whether it's ethical or not. And
Mm.
there's other brands that are really looking at and listening to their sustainability teams, or the founder or whoever it happens to be has said, we're just going to do something much better.
Hmm.
And so they're sourcing, they're really being proactive. They're looking around the world for different solutions.
Hmm.
And I know of a number of brands that have kind of done that already. So it just depends on I guess, the corporate culture.
Hmm.
And one of the things I can say, and I found this to be uh, pretty true, in that if the private companies seem to be doing a better job, in my
Hmm.
opinion.
Hmm.
Companies, um, they're harder to change, and the reason for that, I believe, comes down to shareholder value. So what happens is the sustainability people bump up against the upper management, the president, and, the CFO, and all these other
Hmm.
guys. And those guys really don't want to change the money machine. They want that
Hmm.
money machine to keep going, right? Because if it doesn't, or they make a change and the consumer doesn't like the change,
Yeah.
they're the ones that are out of the job, right?
Yeah.
And so I've really found that when I've spoken to those type of people in the upper levels, upper management of those large corporations, they are really resistant to change. Um, and then on the flip side of that, I have met a couple that were really, really proactive.
Hmm.
And I'll give you an example. Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger,
Hmm.
uh, you know, big brands. I think they're like $9 billion a year just in denim. And so they invited me to a screening of RiverBlue in Amsterdam. This is pre-COVID. So I flew over there, and I didn't know what I was really kind of getting into. I said, "Well, how many
Yeah.
people is going to be in a private meeting?" I'm talking to the sustainability guy and their marketing people who are bringing me over, and say, "Well, there's going to be a bunch of executives and whatever else, and we want to do, see the film and then have a question and answer with you and talk about kind of what we're doing and all that kind of stuff." So I said, "Okay, fine." So I get over there, and they had a room. They had 250 executives from around their organization and designers from around Europe that came to this screening of River Blue. And
Mm.
then afterwards, we're having this big discussion. It went on for like 3, 4 hours. Excuse me. And at the end of that, the president gets up on stage and says, uh, "We are definitely committed to detoxing Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger,
Wow.
and we're going to try to do that within the next couple of years." And it was quite funny because I'm sitting beside the head sustainability guy, and he kind of looks and goes, "I don't think we can get there in 2 years, but you know, that's so great that they
Hmm.
have their president
Hmm.
willing to give them the support, and how do we then change their manufacturing and all
Yeah.
the rest of it, going to do it, that's for the sustainability team to really figure out and to get it into play wherever they're manufacturing their clothing.
Yeah.
So, but what a cool thing that the president of that huge company
Yeah.
is trying to give support and trying to be proactive and looking at that detox report and trying to make a change. And I thought that was
Yeah.
fantastic for a really large company to be doing that. It really takes a will and a corporate culture to make a real drastic change in how they're manufacturing. There's a company actually in Los Angeles called
Hmm.
Triarchy, and they're a smaller brand. And
Hmm.
this is a guy, Adam, who's the president of the company. He went on a bit of a quest. He actually is a denim designer,
Hmm.
small brand, but he went on his own little quest and went, I've got to do better.
Hmm.
And he found a manufacturing facility in Mexico City, and they were doing everything right: wastewater treatment, better dyes. I think they're using organic dyes. He just had a list of stuff that they're doing, and
Yeah.
so he moved his manufacturing to them.
Wow.
Does it cost more? Yes, it does cost a little more when you're doing that type of thing.
Hmm.
Does his fan base, does his consumers care? They care a lot. And so
Hmm.
he's now doing really, really well. And what he's doing, which I think other manufacturers need to do, is the social media and the social messaging.
Yeah.
A lot of times I see is it's an eco brand. Okay, why? Why are they
Hmm.
calling it an eco brand? Just greenwashing.
Yeah.
Are they really doing something? Are they really actually doing something? I think they could do a better job storytelling on their own website of stories of their own initiatives and
Right.
how they're changing their processes and therefore changing the world.
Yeah.
And I think consumers actually want to see that.
Yes, we do.
You mentioned Good on You, and that's again, a directory that I just found was fantastic. And when I
Mm.
am doing these type of interviews, I bring that up all the time because they've just been growing and again doing their research into what brand is doing what
Hmm.
and giving the system. And when I'm shopping, that's the first place I go, whether it's shoes, shirts, whatever. I go to Good
Okay.
on You and I say, I need a new shirt.
Yeah.
Okay. I found out it's somebody who's doing a good shirt
Yeah.
and go buy it.
Yeah. You've
It's
taken the legwork out of it for a lot of people. A lot of people are not going to go and do that. So, in terms of storytelling, you've done a great job by, I'm assuming you set up the RiverBlue, the movie eco website because there are the links to action. You can discover fashion heroes, how to take action. That's where I discovered the app to download. That tells you that you can search by category and all the companies are rated. You can find out more about all the experts in the film. There are many of them, dozens. There's behind the scenes encounters with. I mean, did you put this website together?
Yeah, well, I didn't personally do it, but I produced and directed it, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a graphic designer and a guy coding and doing all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we put together. It's. I thought it was a pretty good website. And
Yeah.
again, we wanted to be able to share that type of information with consumers. So if they see the film, or they want to know more about the film,
Mm-hmm.
or about the experts, or about what they can do, or even read the Greenpeace detox toxic threads, that report from 2012, it's up there. And so
Yeah.
it's a pretty good site for resources. But what I've really found is that I think is really interesting is the Europeans are much further advanced in sustainability and sustainable clothing
Uh-huh.
than the North Americans are. And we are far more advanced than anyone over in Asia is. And Australia is actually very advanced. So there is a growing demand for better clothing. And a lot of it we found kind of going through and figuring out the demographics of who's watching, who wants to know more. It's quite honestly, there's a lot of young women that are between 18 and 35 or 40,
Mm-hmm.
and especially young women that have young children,
Mm.
because the biggest organ we have is our skin. And so, do you want to put a bunch of chemicals against your baby's skin? The people that are going to survive are going to be doing it better and doing it with online. Do they
Mm-hmm.
really need the stores, the space that they have? Probably not.
Yeah.
Maybe they can downsize and have a little smaller footprint, which also helps.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there's just obviously the pandemic has been terrible for the whole world, but
Mm-hmm.
out of that, uh, there sometimes can be opportunities when we're going through difficult times. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, we can relook at who we are and what we want and go, okay, do I really need all this clothing?
I was watching one of the trailers and it said to ask Roger Williams about the last paddle.
Oh, really?
Also, oh, okay, you're prepared. Oh my gosh,
So
that's great.
that's funny. So the last paddle is actually coming out this fall. It's kind of the next film that we've done. And what happened was
Hmm.
actually while we're shooting River Blue,
Hmm.
um, I was really, again, I was talking to river keepers around the world, and we didn't have very many of them in River Blue, but I saved a lot of this footage, and I kind of knew that we had two films,
Hmm.
and really interesting to as we're traveling around the world, we were finding good news stories, but not, they weren't really associated with fashion, and we also saw some bad news stories, of course, around
Yeah.
water as well. So I really wanted to come up with another documentary that really is about river conservation, river restoration,
Hmm.
and with Mark Angelo because of his connections with World Rivers Day, and then just his connections around the world with all these different the River Keeper Alliance,
Hmm.
and so yeah, we're just finishing up this film last panel. We're just creating the website for that, and it'll be coming out this fall again to film festivals. And we're kind of cross promoting it, and it's all really about positive stories, and of course, yeah, we see some bad stuff, but it's really about
Hmm.
how do we get past that and how do we get
Yeah.
better? How can we make some changes? And Mark was very, very instrumental in the cleanup of Howe Sound, which is just outside of Vancouver
Hmm.
on the coast. And there was a mine up there 30 years ago that was leaching all kinds of copper and all kinds of terrible chemicals into Howe Sound, and it killed the sound.
Oh.
And it took him decades to actually work with government, work with industry, work with universities to figure out how do we fix this problem. And so that's one of the stories in the last panel that we bring out, along with a few others. And it really has had a remarkable recovery because of what they did to create a waste treatment facility and take out chemicals and do all the stuff. And so
Hmm.
he was a guy that I really enjoyed working with. So
Wow.
yeah, we wanted to tell some of these stories from around the world that are, again, really positive stories post pandemic, because I don't really want to travel a whole lot right now.
Right.
But yeah, Blue 2 is kind of one of those things. I'd like to go find some of these really good news stories that have just come out. Tesla is using Pinatex and mushroom leather in their cars now. And that's, of course,
Wow.
leather made from mushrooms. That's
Yeah.
organic, and they're not using all the toxic leather that's coming out of various countries and has all kinds of cadmium, lead, and mercury and all kinds of stuff that they've used to tan
Yeah.
leather. So apparently, if you want to buy a new Tesla with regular leather, you have to spend more money. And so they're
Hmm.
made a real conscious effort. And I
Okay.
applaud Tesla and Elon Musk for everything that they're doing to, become better stewards of the environment as well.
Yeah.
So, it's great to have those type of stories come along. And, like I said, finding this dye company that's making dye from bacteria, that's just,
Hmm.
well, that could be a huge game changer for the whole textile industry. And
Yeah.
so as those things progress, so we may, if we can, maybe in a couple of years, we can go do a recap of River Blue 2 and really look at some real positive changes in the industry. And actually, a little shout out to Doug Johnson, who was our composer for
Right.
River Blue Glass Panel.
We were super impressed by the soundtrack.
The soundtrack is stunning. It's up on Spotify actually, um, and working with Doug is a real true pleasure.
Hmm.
He's such an incredible talent, and
Keyboardist from Loverboy. Just want to throw that out. Canadian band.
that's right. You can watch a film, and if it doesn't have the right music, the right composition behind it, it really can be detrimental to the film. And
Hmm.
or, it'd be better to have a silent film in that case. But again, working with musicians who have the sensibilities of seeing again what I shot, and then to be able to put that kind of right in the case of River Blue, when I was talking to Doug about what I wanted for the film musically,
Hmm.
it had to have that world beat. It had to have different things. We needed to bring out different instruments. I highly recommend them. If there's any filmmakers out there and you need a composer, give me a call. I'll put you in touch.
Well, I want to thank you again for giving us so much of your time and sharing so many more of your stories behind River Blue, the making of, and also what's happened since River Blue came out in 2017. And I wish you all the best, and I hope that, we'll stay in touch. And this has been illuminating and fun and interesting. And yeah, thank you so much, Roger.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Let's make fashion help change the world.
Very cool. Okay, we will. I'm notoriously late to the party, but I really want to become a more conscientious consumer when it comes to not only the food that I eat, or the products that I put on my skin, but also the denim that I buy moving forward. So check out riverbluethemovie.eco. Make that transition to becoming a more conscientious, eco-friendly consumer. You do not have to throw away your denim.